Hey there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia video. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, episode 13, Final Performance, which serves as the grand finale of the huge battle in Jakku that's been unfolding over the last couple of episodes, and sets us up for the cooldown episode next week. And before we go any further, I would like to say that I have read the manga, and I'm aware of any relevant future plot points and details, but for the purpose of these reviews, I really like to approach things more from an anime-only perspective, so that anime-only fans can watch along and join in too. And so, with all that being said, let's jump into the episode. So, our cold opening, once again, serves as a recap of the entire arc so far, with Best Jeanist reflecting on how the many different heroes had given their all, and in some cases, their very lives, in order to try and protect people and take down Gigantomachia. And that their supposed victory is all down to those tiny threads coming together to form a great rope to defeat the Paranormal Liberation Front. And of course, all the while, we see the different heroes that have been defeated or killed over the course of the season so far, with many of them with fates uncertain as of right now. But you can assume that a lot of them are probably dead. So yeah, that's a bit of a bummer. And honestly, these openings this season, they've just been hitting different sometimes. The last couple of recaps have really helped me get into the swing of things right from the get-go, and really goes to show how intense this arc's become simply in terms of body count. I mean, the absolute carnage in comparison to the previous arcs is truly insane. But anyway, we then hit the intro, and we get into the episode, where we pick up with Compress, Shigaraki, and Spinner all getting bound up by Best Jeanist, who can now dedicate himself fully to knocking them out with his blackout bind, now he no longer has to try and keep Gigantomachia down. Mr. Compress is, understandably, a bit pissed off that all of their trump cards have been squandered, and now he and Spinner are all that's left to fight, besides Darby, but he's a bit obsessive with Shoto right now. And then we get some League of Villains flashbacks, which, I guess on one hand, this did feel a bit like padding, but at the same time, it was nice to see some of the cuts from the previous season get addressed, even if it was just a little bit, as they showed the League attack the Creature Rejection Clan and utterly slaughter them, and we get to hear about the group's financial struggles after their clash with Overhaul, and then also get that missing Spinner backstory, talking about how he was a shut-in who hid away from his regional community as they rejected him for being a lizard. We learn that full-body mutant quirks weren't as accepted as they were in the city, and that was simply how he thought life would always be for him, until he saw Stain's final speech before being arrested, and was inspired to take action himself, to try and bring about an end to the false hero society that allowed him to be rejected in the first place, to bring about true freedom. And honestly, I did find it quite amusing that they crammed all the backstory and character development of those two least utilised LOV members into a single episode at the very last second. And I realised that it was already written that way for Compress, but definitely had a feeling of, oh shit, we need to add Spinner's backstory quick. Add it in here. A last second addition. But at the same time, I don't think I really mind, because it was fun to get back to that classic LOV lineup and their dynamics. And it's probably the last time we'll see it because, Twice is dead, Shigaraki's changed, and Darby's revealed himself as Toya. And as much as it's clear that they don't all get along or even care about each other much at all, it does feel like a weird little found family in a way. And so I am going to miss it quite a lot. And I think Compress agrees, reflecting on how, despite their hard times, when it was just the original team, it felt right. And then he tells Spinner this, and that he'll buy him some time to waste Shigaraki up, before gouging a chunk out of his own ass and hip with his quirk, compressing Shigaraki and Spinner, and beginning his escape. Jeanist then tries to bind his clothing instead, and Compress just gouges more parts of himself, to ensure that he can't be bound up anymore. Premium badass, I tell you what. And he's always been a character that's got next to no spotlight, but here we go, at last. And then as he rescues Spinner, he thinks about how his two major skills are tricking people and running away. And whilst they might not be the best traits to have as a villain in his shoes, he's gonna use them to save his team and keep the cause alive. He then thinks about how he's the descendant of a famed criminal, Oji Harima, who would steal from false heroes and distribute the money amongst those who need it more. And yeah, this felt like something that was supposed to be, kind of epic, but it sort of fell flat for me. Like, this guy did not get the same sort of build-up like Destro or All For One to make them seem like real big-time villains. You just kind of told he's a big-time villain, so it's harder to care. But still, it was nice to see him get some development regardless. We then move on to continue the fight between Darby and Shoto, and yeah, they're going all out, both doing their best Endeavour impression, with Darby seemingly overpowering Shoto with relative ease, knocking him away and proclaiming that since Endeavour is unconscious, he has no desire to keep fighting him, and that he wants him to watch it all crumble around him before Shoto dies. Anyway, he then gets compressed, And Mr. Compress decides that now it's time for him to make his last stand, releasing Spinner and Shigaraki, and declaring that now it's time for his once-in-a-lifetime escape show, attracting the attention of Genist and Lemillion, who rush to stop him. But first, we have to cut away to the B-listers, who are still fighting against the activated Nomu with a bunch of corpses around them, so looks like it isn't going too well for them. Burnin's bloodied and is fighting a worm Nomu who goes for the kill, and once again, she needs to be saved. This time by a hero named Master Driller, great name, who manages to kill the worm, but not before getting chomped in half and dying as he does so. Damn, bad luck to that guy. Looks like teaming up with Burnin is becoming a little bit hazardous to your health. And as this is all going on, One For All just won't let poor Deku rest, and he gets woken up by the first user, pestering him to get up. Poor dude has noodle arms and noodle legs, and he's bleeding out. And on top of that, he has no more adrenaline to fuel him. Let him lay down, Jesus. What more can he possibly do? Anyway, he remembers what a shit situation they're in, and then he starts to get some pretty intense migraines, remembering from his notes that this is the quirk of the fourth user of One For All, Danger Sense. So at this point, he's really just becoming an overpowered Spider-Man, isn't he? And unluckily for Deku, it's going haywire right now, like when he first manifested Black Whip in the joint training battles and it just went berserk. And thus, it's making it difficult for him to stay conscious as his head is splitting. And honestly, what a nightmare of a quirk if you can't control it. It sounds good, but the reality is truly awful. And on top of that, Deku gets the super steroid version of these quirks, as they've had time to grow in strength much like his superpower has. So it just seems like a massive downside to me. And then it's back to the battle. Compress instantly gets slapped away by Lemillion, but he accepts it for what it is. He's just there to buy time. He didn't actually think he could win. He's the supporting character, and Shigaraki's the one he knows can save them, and so it's left up to Spinner to wake him up, who pulls a legit big brain move and puts one of the embalmed hands on Shigaraki's face to calm him, to center him, and most importantly, reignite his rage, and it sort of works, as he does wake up, but he isn't behind the wheel. All For One's in charge, and he acts a bit more pragmatically than I think Spinner expected him to, telling him that they can't win now and that they need to retreat. And honestly, this whole sequence was just pretty awesome in general. Great music, lots of tension, good action, and somehow it made me briefly root for the villains to have some success here. Anyway, like I said, he wants to run away, as he knows the body is on the verge of collapse because of the fight with Deku and Endeavor, and so he calls over all of the Nomu, forcing Best Jeanist, who looks like he's hemorrhaging out of every orifice at this point, to bind them all at once. And honestly, imagine coming back from a massive injury, only to likely rupture all of your organs at once in your first fight back. Big F in the chat to Best Jeanist. Anyway, this fight then goes to show what a pro All For One is, as he dispatches Lemillion, Ingenium, and Shoto in 2 moves. Just suckering them in, having an attack that Lemillion could see and thus dodge, but that would put him in the path of an unavoidable second attack from behind him. Following that by waiting until the last second, when there's no chance of either of the other two pulling out of their attacks in time, for him to counterattack and knock them out. I do love an intelligent villain. Anyway, some of the Nomu then break free, as Jeanist is too weak to hold them all at this stage, allowing them to pick up the villains and run away, which forces Deku to power up and chase them down with his Black Whip tongue. And this in turn earns him a commendation from All For One, who lauds him for being as tenacious and determined as All Might himself, which would, in any other context, likely turn Deku into a giddy fanboy. And he leaves him with a promise to fight again when the power-up's complete and Shigaraki's body is whole. And so Deku in turn gets slapped away, and the fight ends right there. With Deku, as he begins losing consciousness, thinking about how he needs to save Shigaraki from All For One. Jesus, that kid's a better person than me, I'll give him that. We then get the Might You soundtrack to play, which, hell yeah, love that track. And we get to play a guessing game on which of our favourite heroes are dead or not, or that are going to die in hospital like Sir Nidai did. Whilst also checking in with our battered student heroes, all of whom in Jakku have collapsed from the strain of fighting, and in the mountain villa, where they seem to be the last men standing at all. And just a side note, I thought it was quite telling that you only see Majestic's ripped hat, and Midnight's battered mask, and a pool of blood. So, at minimum, those two are dead for sure. We then finish with Deku staring up into the sky, finally passing out. And good, this dude needs to rest and go to hospital. His arms are surely ruined at this stage, right? He broke them very badly and then he just kept using them over and over. And surely his legs are in trouble at this point too. Ooh, bad luck to him. Good thing he has Black Whip, I guess. And so then we finish off with a preview that promises a look at the aftermath of the war, both from a personal perspective with all the heroes in hospital and all that, but also the political and social ramifications too. What society thinks of what they've done. And that should be fun. And I really love this finale, honestly. We got some great development for some minor villains, and the show made me somehow root for these minor villains, to get excited to see them, and then sad to see them go. And on top of that, we just had some more awesome battles and an emotional musical montage. This season really has had it all so far. I'm loving it. And so yeah, with all that being said, that's the end of the video, and I would like to say that these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Do you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.